This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello. Welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. My name is Harry Wilkinson, and I am your host on this show in which we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world of politics, happenings in the world of, everything that affects us, the environment, business, technology, all of these things that we interact with on a platforms, from the so-called new media, even social media, to more traditional forms, to the internet, all of these things which we now have in abundance surrounding us almost constantly. And we take a step back because we need to, because it can become so overwhelming. And we take that necessary step back and we look at these things from a higher perspective. We look at these stories from the perspective of what we are creating, because at a very real level, we are creating all of it. What it's telling us about ourselves, and how ultimately we are changing ourselves, expanding, becoming more aware of the truth of who and what we are. And any of these situations, whether they be personal life situations or news stories that you might find disturbing or upsetting, or just information that you may find to be too much, any and all of this can be used to really realign, to really become more deeply aware of the truth of who and what we are. And you do that by going into that situation, recognizing the truth of it, recognizing that it's a creation, and an illusion, a reflection of something deeper inside. And then in that understanding, in that even appreciation of the creation that you've made, you then take energy from that and you expand, because you begin to understand the storyline involved here, right? Because there's a storyline going on. Because as you deal with all of these situations, think back on how you got through it. Think back on what you were like before and what you are like now. And then you can begin to envision what you might be like in the future. But more important than anything else is to stay present. uh, that we use to challenge ourselves and grow and as I'm also taking that same approach with things that are happening in my life. And I use this show to help remind me, to help focus me. And along the way, if I am able to help others who might be listening, I'm more than happy to do that. In fact, I'm very glad to do that. And I have heard from some listeners, which is great. I always like to hear input from you. So you can always contact me. You can contact me on my Facebook page, which is two things come to mind, particularly over the last 25 years. Previously, of course, Groundhog Day is, the day where Punxsutawney Phil, that's the groundhog, comes out of his little hole, and there's a big ceremony in which people wait to see if he sees his shadow or does not. And if he sees his shadow, then there's 6 more weeks of winter. If he does not, then we're going to have an early spring. And oh, by the way, just for news content, he did see his shadow this time around. So 6 more weeks of winter. It's kind of a silly tradition, but the other thing that comes to mind when Groundhog Day comes around is the film of the same name that came out 25 years ago, in 1993, starring Bill Murray. And it has become, I guess you could call things that I think are spiritual films. And cultures and across religions, for many, it's since become a film that does get discussed by, religious groups, religious leaders, so on and so forth. Despite the fact that it is not a religious movie in any shape or form, but it is a spiritual movie, or you could consider it to be that way. And it has become something of a, a reflection of our own desire for deeper understanding about our lives. The reason for that is, pretty clear. And if you're not familiar with the film, if you're not familiar with the plot, which I'm sure you are, it has to do with Bill Murray, who plays a weatherman at a local news station. And he's not a particularly nice guy. He's just kind of selfish and mean. And he gets assigned to cover Punxsutawney Phil, the Groundhog, and the ceremony that surrounds it. And he's very cynical about the whole thing, and he doesn't want to be there. And he's just got a kind of obnoxious personality. His co-workers, his co-anchor and cameraman just really have a hard time dealing with him. And they don't seem to like him very much. But what happens is, once the day is over and he's finished covering the Groundhog ceremony and all of that stuff, and he goes to bed in his hotel room, he wakes up to the sounds of "I Got You, Babe," the famous song by Sonny and Cher. And then he gets to the end of that day, goes to sleep, wakes up again to Sonny and Cher, whole thing starts again. So he begins to repeatedly live the same day many times. Now, within that framework of repeating the same day many times, he's able to change certain things. He's able to do certain things. And by the end of his time going over and over the same day, over and over again, in an endless loop, he develops a humanity, learns how to play the piano. This idea of reliving the same situations until you grow from them, until you become something more, is really the key to the film and what really resonates with people. And Buddhists were the first to sort of embrace it. Because